Welcome back to another designer profile video, and in this video we're going to look at the work of Energ1ser with Lauterbrunnen, which was his Swiss course for the National Treasure Contest last year, and I feel like this should have been a Stonewall top 3. It's an outstanding course that didn't quite get the love it really should have done from the judges. Now, first thing that nabs you with this one is the incredible use of the Swiss theme to give us something that looks a bit different to what we normally would do. The sheer cliff faces and the backdrop are phenomenally hard to sculpt, and he did an outstanding job of replicating a real-world location and then putting an outstanding course on it that uses elevation change really well, both side hill, uphill, downhill, and it's some of that we're going to dig into. Now, in terms of the classic things you should take from pretty much any Geyser course, you're looking at stellar bunkering throughout, really clever and subtle green complexes, and he always provides a way, if you're out of position, to have another go at getting a heroic approach onto the green. There's always clever backstops or side hill slopes that can funnel the ball towards pins without necessarily being in punch bowls. So those are some of the things we're going to particularly pick up on. The strategy's there, it's really subtle, it's cleverly done. And he is, for me, one of the most underrated designers in the game. His consistency of producing top courses is unparalleled. So we're going to leap in and look at a few of the best holes from this course and what you can take from it in your own designs. So the first hole immediately gives us that sense of scale that he would have wanted with this sort of dramatic location. Now we're hitting a tee shot towards a fairway that veers up and towards the right, and it's a great, interesting green site. It would have been really easy to go down and left, but going to an uphill green site that's a bit more perched is really interesting. You can see the land movement just in front of the green, meaning distance control on an uphill shot is paramount, and that little false front makes it all the more important if you're trying to chase those front pins to a green that slopes back to front, so you want to be below the hole. So all of these slopes really well considered, but you do have those kind of side slopes, so if you go long and a bit left, you'll still end up with a decent look. Again, there's so many choices for best par 4, but for me the one that always stood out with this course was the third, which is potentially drivable if you shoot that narrow gap between the bunkers on the right hand side. If you do play out left, you are left with a little pitch shot over a mound to a green that kind of falls away from you, although there are some slopes towards back pins that may help from that position, so you're never totally out of it. But the pins on the front particularly, you don't want to be missing left, and if you do go for it, you've got an eagle chance. It's a great hole, really good risk reward, but all playing off that big elevation change and everything going away from you. There were only 3 par 5s on this course, but they each stand out in terms of location and shots that it's requiring you to hit in. With the 11th, which is my pick of them, you hit over this bunker cluster on the left hand side and you're trying to hold that left as much as you can do to a fairway that it's quite tricky to get to that side. Now once you do, you're then featuring this uphill approach shot, which makes you question whether you've quite got enough club to clear that hillock just on the side. Now, if you're laying up, you might want to be shooting down the green, but these spines in the middle make it really interesting because actually you could want to play out right and gain the angle and a slight backstop coming in at them. So there's multiple ways to play this hole, and for me that made it particularly interesting. Now the closing hole sees us looking back down the valley again towards the clubhouse, and whilst a relatively simple tee shot, if you look, and when you look at it closely, you want to be hugging that left-hand side again, with the fairway trying its best to sweep you down to the right, which is going to bring that bunker right of the green into play. But again, for a longer-ish approach on this one, there's still some really favourable green slopes which will work the ball towards the hole. So you've got a multitude of ways of getting the ball close and finding your way to get around the course. I think for me that's what put this course over the top of the number of others. So as ever, what can you particularly take from this course and using your own designs? I mean, firstly, as with so many of the others, the plot is phenomenal and really defines this course. That's the star of the show, and the big views that he generates is perfect. What he then does that's very clever to allow that to happen is where he's allowed space, and he hasn't planted trees absolutely everywhere. He's allowed those long views to just happen, which means like when you're playing 2, for example, you can see 3, you can see 4, you can see 7, you can see 17. You can see the 18th tee, you can see that village in the background. You can even see all the way down to 6 and 8 over here. So if you're going for the plot being spectacular, don't clutter it with everything else. Now in terms of other things, well, the routing's really clever in terms of it would be very easy to have all of the holes going down and left, and those would be the easiest holes because they're going downhill. So like your 8th hole, I'd say that's an easier one to find. But then when you get to the uphill holes again, you don't want to be going straight up. So the way in which he tacks across the land is really clever. I'm just giving you a little zoom at the routing overall. Things like 3 were quite easy holes. 4 going straight up, you can have 1 or 2 of those, but you don't want multiple zigzags where you're just basically fighting to get back to the high ground. And that's what makes holes like 11 and 16 so vital to this routing. Coming up with good uphill holes is what makes a course like this really shine. He then has a couple of other wonderful little planting moves. So I loved the dried out creek bed here, was great. The little lake, and it's just this restraint. He doesn't crutch on these by putting a par 3 here, because that would be really easy to do. However, it wouldn't be in keeping with the rest of the course. So he doesn't. It's a par 4, you play up to there, get a great view of the lake, and then turn back, and it feels very realistic. Little stone wall here. Again, steps. Subtle little features that work really, really well. And when you play a geyser course, subtlety and just like, they're really classy courses. And that's what I would keep looking out for with this one. Play it on multiple pins, it's really friendly as well. I think the other major thing I always take from his courses are you're never totally out of position. Even if you've ended up in this bunker, you will have a way of making par pretty easily, and birdie is still an option. He never takes that away from you. They're really good courses. There's so many others of his to take to have a look at as well. Do give them a play and enjoy your rounds.